Welcome to Politics for Thinkers.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Politics for Thinkers. I'm your host, Jennifer Barreto Leiva. And today we will have a very interesting conversation with a colleague that actually cover all the protests that are happening in India. Apparently, Generation X is taking their power and doing something towards in politics. They are not happy with a certain situation that we will hear today with my colleague that actually covered the protest. And we are going to try to understand a bit better because it's extremely difficult to get information from a reliable source. So today we are trying to understand what is going on in India, why the protest has this particular name, everything related to this protest. We are going to talk about it today and understand it with my guest. And now it's time to get to meet her. My guest today is Pratiksha Singh. She is a journalist, broadcast journalist with 5+ years of experience across India, leading national and international news networks, specializing in breaking news, live field reporting, global affairs, political analysis, defense, and legal journalism. Proven track record of securing exclusive interviews and access to heads of state, Nobel laureates, senior intelligence officials, diplomats, and key policy makers. Strong legal grounded through LLB studies, enabling nuanced reporting on constitutional, regulatory, and public policies issues. She is currently working on News X World, this network in India where I contribute as an analyst. So let's give her what the welcome she deserves and start right away the conversation. Hello, Pratishka. How are you doing? I'm so happy to have you here. And now the tables are turned. Now I interview you. How are you doing?
Indeed, the tables are turned where it's usually you who is joining us on the channel and then our side interviewing you. So it's really good to be in a conversation with you, especially seeing you all good and healthy after the earthquake. And I hope everything is well from your end as well.
Thank you so much. And you were the first person I talked to in the media, and you were so kind. And our colleagues in News X World were so kind to us. So thank you so much from the bottom of my heart to understand the situation. It was the first time I experienced like an earthquake, and it's so powerful. So it was a horrible
I know
momentum,
it was
but
horrible.
yes,
Yeah.
but now it's time to talk about what is going on in India. You are experiencing a very interesting momentum in politics as a young woman, and also the protest has a very uncommon name. Please try to enlighten us and tell us what is going on.
Well, actually, that it is more like a movement that started online. I just in a brief, our Supreme Court's Chief Justice somehow gave a statement, whose statement was, his words were wrong. The words he chose to, uh, introduce our youngsters. He said that the youngsters protesting these days are like cockroaches, and that his he wanted to say something else, and he is a chief justice of the country. He is the senior most judge of the country, and that coming from a judge, of course, it gained a momentum. And some guy named Abhijit Deepke, what he did was he used this thing, the cockroach tag, and he used it in his favor. And then, it's more like somebody saying you're a loser, and then you are saying, okay, I'm a loser, I'm the best loser out there. So that way, so the judge said you're a cockroach, the youngsters are cockroach. Abhijit said we are the best cockroaches out there, and then he started the cockroach Janta Party. It's more like it's kind of similar to the ruling party, Bharatiya Janata Party. Bharatiya means Indian Janta, Indian Public Party. Janta is the public, Indian Public Party. So, something similar to that, he started Cockroach Janta Party, which was, it used this as a sarcasm, and he just made an Instagram account. That guy who's a Gen Z, who is in his 20s, he made an Instagram account, and it gained so much momentum. He got what, 10 million followers in just a span of a week. So that was a very interesting development that happened. That was one thing. And you know what followed up? So NEET is a very important exam in India. You cannot be a doctor if you don't appear in NEET, because you need to have, NEET is like the most basic entrance exam for any medical student. So if you want to get into MBBS, NEET examination is very important, and you have to give that. It's more like a graduation for the medical students, and you cannot be a doctor without that. So NEET examination, which happens on a nationwide scale, it is a national examination, and say it had happened in the past that the papers of this exam was leaked. So somehow it's a big racket that happens, must be happening in Venezuela as well, must be happening in a lot of countries, that somebody writes the question paper and somebody known to that person somehow leaks it, especially in the world of technology, using Telegram. There's a whole racket that is going on of this paper leaking thing, and these people sell these question papers in like lakhs of rupees, which is like thousands of dollars. If you say thousands of US dollar, these papers are sold, and so it's like a very big scam that is happening. And this exam was leaked, and of course it affects the youngsters only, and this is exactly how the momentum started. So now the youngsters were furious. Now that this man Abhijit Dipke used this as a, more like, he was into all the movements, all the things for youngsters. He was fighting for against unemployment, he was fighting for education, and in his fight for education, suddenly this paper leak happened. And not only that, paper leaks happened. 12 students committed suicide. So 12 students, like some 18 to 20-year-old kids who spent like 2 to 3 years just studying for this thing, and then the exam is leaked. So that is a big trouble, and this is how the protest started. And Abhijit Dipke, who started the CJP, he laid the foundation of this protest, and then people joined, and then students from all over the country joined. And of course, if a protest starts, it doesn't really stay to that topic. And then after they started off with the NEET paper leak, but then of course it went on to government's transparency, and then unemployment, and then a lot of things that is going on that is wrong from the government's end. All of those were targeted in these things. Even some movements, there were movements when people use this as a farmer protest. Some people use this as a narrative to raise their voice for Kashmir. So a lot of things were happening, but the main protest, the base of the protest that was laid by the movement started by Abhijit Dipke, was for the students, was for this anti paper leak scam. This protest was, and then eventually government took the steps as well.
Something that I've noticed is a common thing among politicians all over the world. Now, good that you cover politics from all over the world. They seems to not understand yet the fact that anytime you mess up with a youngster, someone, call it Generation X, call it whatever you want, they will take social media as a battlefield, and it will have the attention of every single person with the same age and probably with the same issues they are, dealing with, and is going to be against them. They seems to not understand actually how Generation X is solving, or Generation Z, I sorry, they are taking every social issue out there, and on the top of that, calling cockroach someone is so disgusting and disrespectful that I think it was like gasoline all
Not
over the
someone,
issue.
the whole youth. It was not just one
Uh,
person. He labeled that to be he labeled the whole youth as a cockroach.
and he's
So
not a nobody. He's someone that should have certain behavior. And
he has the biggest legal position. He's the chief justice of the country. You're getting it? Like all the major decisions, if he has said something, that thing is fixed. Supreme Court's orders are not denied by anybody.
mm,
And that is like a stamp that has to happen. And then somebody like that choosing words like this is, of course, it was wrong of him to choose the words. His context was probably different, but then the wordings were wrong, and I think he should have been more careful while choosing, especially when you are at such a high position.
absolutely. And how can you ask for respect and certain behavior to citizens
Exactly.
when you behave this way? It's so double standard. Um, One of the
Agreed.
reason I have on my notes of this protest too is the lack of job opportunities from the prime minister. Is that true?
No, as I said, that if a protest is started, so many issues are raised there. It's more like
Mm.
if you did a crime, so you somehow stole a purse of somebody, and if you're caught, then your whole biodata is kind of researched upon. So that is how you then your name goes to the police records, and then they realize that okay, you did this crime as well, you did that crime as well. So if one issue is raised, so multiple issues somehow pop up from that. This protest started off for education, but yes, this is a thing that unemployment is a very big issue in the country. A lot of people are jobless, but it's not only in India. I think Europe is facing from the same crisis. Of course, South America is. I've read so many reports that it's a global issue, and even in United States, I know so many people who are jobless, who have studied from the best of the colleges out there, from the Ivy Leagues, and still sitting jobless. So employment is an issue which is raised in almost all the elections and almost all the protests, because this is something that the whole it's not only the young generation, even the older ones whose children out there who spend their lives earning on their children's education, and then those children are not getting a job. So of course that is a problem that is faced by everybody, and this issue was also raised in this protest. Unemployment was indeed a very big issue for the whole the fiasco that happened, and the movement started based on that. When the movement started, before the need paper leak, before anything that happened, before the suicide of these kids, this movement, the cockroach and the party, started off on the scale that you don't know what this unemployed youth who you are labeling as cockroach. So basically, the man labeled these unemployed youth as cockroaches. He said that they are cockroach. They just come out to protest when some things like this is happening. So this is what happened, and that is a result of the protest started off based on unemployment. So that is one thing, and on the other hand, um, prime minister and the government is definitely trying their best. I don't want to say that nothing is being done. Of course, all the governments are somehow taking some steps uh, to curb this unemployment. But in a country with such a gigantic population where 1.5 billion people reside, some job opportunities. Tomorrow, Prime Minister is coming up with about 21,000 jobs. In a country of 1.5 billion people, how will 21,000 jobs or say 100,000 jobs going to fix any issue? So this really needs a lot of attention. And one thing which is good about the government, at least this government, is that they are really focusing on less of uh, job seeking and more of job making. So yes, the country, I'm not saying that they are not doing anything at all. They are definitely taking steps, especially the current regime. They are indeed taking steps to for so that people can create more jobs. Make in India was a thing that was started off by the prime minister, only so that people can, instead of getting things from abroad, uh, say for an example, we have a brand McDonald's. So instead of letting that country, that company come into the country, why don't we create our own McDonald's? Why don't we create our own snack, and then we start off with a new company? And he started to localize all of these things. He started, his mission was, instead of seeking job, let's be job makers. So that was a good initiative, but still employment is an issue, and this is going to take generations to cover if we are going with the same pace. It really requires a big step, a huge step. I think that it is the same problem in Venezuela as well. Delcy Rodriguez is, of course, Maduro was, of course, facing the same issue, and then Delcy Rodriguez is, of course, I feel, facing the same issue there, that there is a huge unemployment in the country, and that is somewhat the cause of most of the problems in the whole country. And I think Europe, as a matter of fact, Europe is, any country is developed only when the youth has a job, only when the youth is there, giving their country, kind of, how should I say, I'm not saying if the youth is earning, or if the youth has a job, is only when a country is developing. But if somebody is unemployed, and somebody really does not have anything to do, they are definitely going to protest, and that those protests and those protests are only going to create fiasco, exactly what happened in India. So this whole momentum started off with unemployment, with the issues faced by youth, with education, lack of education, and then it created such a global level problem, that everybody was paying attention only to New Delhi.
I mean, I the more I listen your explanation, the more it's hard for me to understand. The government contradicts themselves because they ask to the younger generation to go to college, to go to job, they get a job, but they leak exams, but there is a lack of jobs, and there is corruption, administration after administration. So it's like a double message all the time, and you don't know what to
This
do as a
is
young person because you don't know where to go, what to do. There's no future,
uh,
basically.
Do you know, I was reading a report that people are not really looking forward to giving birth these days, especially the educated ones. They're saying that, why should I bring a child in a world where they have to protest for their basic rights like education, like job? They won't have any medium to pay themselves. They won't have any way to survive in this world. Why should I bring that kind of torture to a person who, just because I want a child? And this is very true that the government is, you know, everybody taking birth is actually, the parents are looking forward to a bright future of all their children, but then nobody can see a bright future until and unless the education system is fixed, until and unless the job opportunities are like are in ample number, then until and unless their citizens value is increased. So, like, that Venezuela saw what the death of a few thousand people were killed there. I think more than 5,000 people have already been reported being dead in Venezuela.
Yeah,
And it was a news for a couple of weeks. But what next? Nothing happened. Did the government
nothing.
focus on changing the infrastructure, the core of the problem? No, they're not doing it. Some countries out there who are looking forward to it. Say, okay, so Finland is a country. Finland is really particular, and in fact Switzerland as well. All of these countries are so particular about their citizens. They do not let anybody be jobless, be begging, because they pay from their own end their citizens who are jobless or who are doing nothing. And in fact their citizens are also not like that okay, the government is paying, I just have to sit idle. So if the government is paying you to sustain your life, to and that too not just for food, they are paying them enough to survive a good life, that they can have a shelter, they can have food, they can live off on that particular stipend. Even then those people are really working hard, because number one, they see that the government is really looking forward to their future. Number two, these people are knowing that they have a lot of opportunities. A lot of opportunities are there in Switzerland for the Swiss people. In Finland, Finland is the happiest country only because of these things, where the government is really focused on their citizens, their health, their education. Education is world class. Of course, everybody wants to come to Europe to study only because they have a world class education system. And I don't understand why countries like India and Venezuela, or Pakistan or Bangladesh, or as a matter of fact, even Argentina and Brazil, all of these countries are facing this kind of a problem, I feel.
Yeah, I do believe the corruption is the main issue. If you take the corruption out of the conversation, everything will flow. But the main issue, and it doesn't matter if you talk to an older person, to someone middle aged like me, or a younger person like you, it's the same issue generation after generation. And this is why we're third world countries. And it's unfortunate because we have very talented people in our countries. But if you don't
Yeah.
focus as a government to do what you have to do instead of stealing and doing whatever is wrong, um, things could go some other different way. Um, but the issue doesn't stop here because in my notes I have the response of the government was very lame. I'm going to read for the audience. Ministerial resignation. Protesters successfully forced the resignation of India's education minister Dharmendra Pradhan. Systemic reforms demands include strict penalties for test leak corruption, financial compensation for affected families, and greater government transparency, and crackdowns and detention following initial concessions. Student leaders accuse authorities of launching a fresh crackdown of detaining protesters, prompting threats of renewed demonstration. What is going on with the protesters jailed? Because that is a big deal. It's the same pattern we have here. Every time you raise your voice because you are not agree with something, boom, you're jailed, you're tortured, and the list go on. What is happening with the students that have been jailed?
Okay, yes. So, the protest was halted, and this was halted only on the condition that the CJP spokespeople, they came out and they gave a lot of they gave a list of 5 demands to the government. The government had a conversation with these youngsters, and eventually it was decided that the protest will be taken off, and then it was halted as well, but it started again on the 1st of August, only because of this issue that you just raised, that is the jailing of the protesters. So what happened was that the government, of course, the biggest issue of the protest was the resignation of the education minister, because of course everybody was blaming the education minister for the paper leak. Now, that is one thing that was accepted after a good long time, of course, after so many days into the protests and the riots that happened. But the minister resigned, and then, even the parliament took a step. The debates were conducted, and then anti paper leak laws were strengthened as well. This bill is already passed in the lower house, and then it will be passed in the upper house as well, most probably. And after the president's signature, their government took a lot of steps in this particular law that is being passed in the parliament. It is going to first of all make the punishments more harsh. Any kind of paper leak is going to face, say, a fine of 50 lakh Indian rupees, which is somewhat what 50,000, something like 40,000 US dollars, 45,000 US dollars, something around that. So that would be the kind of fine these people will have to pay if they are leaking the paper, somehow they are caught in that. So that is one thing. And then compensation for all the students who died because of this paper leak. I told you that so many kids, they committed suicide because they saw that their future is going in vain. They were so depressed by this leak. So compensation of 1 crore rupees, which is more like 100K, 100,000 US dollars. So something like that was announced as well. Now, there was this one particular demand by the protesters, which is still debatable. right now, and which you raised, was that the protesters demanded the government to take off all the FIRs, all the cases that were registered against the people on ground protesting, against each and every protester. That is one thing. The government said that they would, but that is, of course, taking its own scale of time. Uh, this is something that which is it's very debatable right now, because what's happening is, of course, a lot of innocent protesters are jailed, which is very true, that they are detained. We have seen so many videos of protesters coming out, and they are being held by the cops, they are being pushed by the cops. Those were students, like literally students below the age of 20 years, and all of these kids had to face a lot of trouble. But there's one more fact there, that this protest saw a lot of unscrupulous elements as well. So as I told you, that people came out with other demands which were not education related, something like free Kashmir. Kashmir is an integral part of India. And then people who are in support of its separation from India also came out. Then people who were in support of separation of Punjab from India also came out. And a lot of unscrupulous elements who also kind of provoked the riots there that we saw, where we saw tear guns and all. So students were there, which is very true. And students were in the highest amount. So say almost 90% of the people there were students, and there were pro protesters, people who were really looking forward to a good education system. Those were there. But those 10% of people, those 10% of elements who kind of destroy the protests in almost all the countries, I really feel that any protest happens, of course, the innocents are also taken in jail. Police really does a lot of bad things to them. They torture them, they detain them, they arrest them, and multiple cases are registered illegally against the protesters. But then this is also true, that a lot of people are there who kind of deliberately cause trouble, and deliberately bring in a lot of stupid things in the protest, which kind of uh, you know s- dials down the intensity of that particular movement that is happening, only because that issue kind of lightens up only because of that particular issue being raised. What happens is that I am protesting for issue A, and some issue B is somehow brought in by, even if it's that one person raises the flag. 100,000 people would be raising the flag for education, but that one person will be raising flag for something which is completely anti-India or completely anti-national. Then the protest, scale changes, and people start looking forward to the protest as something that is being done by anti-nationalists. And then people start looking, okay, these kind of people are also there. So the cases registered, and there are a lot of people against who are arrested, they had criminal backgrounds. This is true, because this came out in records, that a lot of people who against whom the FIRs were registered had criminal records. But the Supreme Court of India, they were very clear that you have to they asked the government to release all the students, all the people who are below the age of 18 who were detained or arrested. And they also there's a lot of debate already going on in the court in this favor as well, saying that the court is actually looking forward to dropping down all the FIRs. The Prime Minister also gave out a lot of videos saying that we are ready to forgive all the protesters, all the students who were there, but still a lot of innocents are in jail. But this is a fact that most of the people, I don't know how it's seen internationally, but most of the people behind the bars for the protests right now are the people, not all of them, most of them are the people with a criminal background in the past only.
Good that you mentioned this, because in the international news, they don't mention that. And that's one of the
Yes,
reasons
this
that
is exactly what happens in most of the countries, that when the people are protesting, usually even I work in international media, we only cover what it's like being the protesters, and it's mostly what we show the lapses from the government's end. But this is also true that if the government is at wrong, which they are most of the time, of course, that is why the people are protesting. But then there are a lot of wrong going on inside that crowd. We don't know when there are like 100,000 people there on ground. We cannot guarantee for each and every person there. I can, if I went to the protest, nobody can know if I'm a student or an unscrupulous element, or I'm some terrorist, or I'm somebody who had murder charges in the past. But I came to the protest, and people like me are arrested there. So yeah, this what happened. This is exactly what happens, and nobody really mentions that, because that is like anti-protesters. It kind of dials down the movement of the students, where we show that okay, this protest was backed by so many criminals as well.
that is one of the reasons that I thought it was so important to have you here. In I I I would like to salute your efforts. I saw some of the videos you posted in social media, and you did such an amazing job covering this. People need to follow her. We will post the social media of her in the info box of this edition of the show for you to see what I'm talking about. There is so many people just in one video. I was like, I thought at the moment I needed some air, because not only they are mad, which is totally understandable, but there is so much people, and with the heat of the moment and the temperature of the country, I mean, there is a lot of going on of things going on there. You were one of the female
I just
covering.
want to share. I just want to share this one incident. So this protest is, of course, whenever protests happen, a lot of countries cover it. But this particular protest was so different. I've covered so many protests in the past. It was so different. I'm not saying that. I'm not really talking about the cause of the whole fiasco that happened. Of course, government is at fault, protesters at fault. Both of them have their own things, but what was beautiful there was everybody wanted to serve. Like I went to the protest myself, and I saw so many people. Some of them are just delivering food for no cause. They're just, they're there doing, they have a job, they have their classes, and it's like it's 40 degrees celsius, they are sweating, but they're sitting there and they are serving water. Other people are serving food for nothing, for no money at all. And they were, everybody wanted to serve, everybody wanted to participate in that protest. More so, they were, the hand fans that we know. Do you, have you seen that hand fan, which doesn't really require a battery?
Yeah.
It's just a flap of a jute, and it's like like a fan. And so many people, the protesters made a line. They were standing in a line, and people who were passing through that, they were constantly fanning the people there. And without, and their hands were aching, so they were changing their hands, but then constantly fanning. So that is the kind of movement these people had. That's the kind of energy this generation Z, generation Z, it had against the government right now. And it had, you know and one more thing, whenever a protest happened, the whole place becomes a mess, because people throw food and everything there. There were so many people, there were, so many extra people, that people had to come and say, okay, no, you are not required. So many volunteers to clean the streets, so many volunteers sending food from all over the country. So the protest was happening in Delhi, and people from the other states, like thousands of kilometers apart, they was sending food online to the protest site. And this food delivery people were coming with loads and loads of food. They were just entering the area, and some volunteer will come, they'll pick it up, and then again they'll just distribute the food, and to the protesters, to everybody who are there. So this was a very beautiful scene that was seen by this generation. There was no caste difference, there was no religion difference. Everybody was just so united in that protest. It was very beautiful, because everybody there wanted to serve. They just wanted to participate in that protest somehow. Somebody wanted to clean, somebody wanted to fan people, somebody wanted to deliver food, somebody wanted to, there were so many people who were even massaging people, who were there standing since day and night. Then people were massaging people, that okay, fine, your legs must be hurt, let me massage you. So this is exactly the kind of sentiment that these protesters had. So it was very beautiful.
That can tells you the number one, the amount of issues India is dealing with, and number two, people is fed up of dealing with these issues. So that
Totally.
tells you a lot. The way the people responded to this, it says a lot. One of the things that I admire the most is you being there as a woman, for the people, for our audience to understand. There's not many female reporters, and you were there. And that is why I'm sorry, but I'm very proud to be part of NewsX as a contributor. That is why it's so important, voices like ours in situations like this, because we are actually telling what it is to the world. If you don't talk to me right now, I wouldn't never learn what is actually going on. All the facts that you have been sharing with us today, nothing of this I have to hear it before in the news. So that this is why it's so important. How do you feel as a woman reporting this in a multitude of people, mostly men, in the crowd, and you trying to take notes of everything what's happening around you?
One different thing about this protest was, and Jennifer, I'll, um, you know, kind of disagree with you here. This one particular protest, I've seen so many protests in my life, so many protests around the globe. But this one particular protest where we saw equal number of participation
Mm.
from women,
Oh.
and women, when I say, it is not like girls above 25. We had girls of 14 years old, 15 years old, even 12 years old. All of these kids were coming, and I'm especially talking about women. They were protesting at 3 a.m., they were protesting at 4 a.m., like middle of the night they're protesting, and they were feeling the safest. And this was the most beautiful part of this particular protest. I have been a part of a protest that happened earlier. And of course, usually when you see a crowd of people, it's only men. Because, in such situations, when there's a huge crowd, women usually feel unsafe because anybody can touch you anywhere, anybody can do anything to you. And this one particular protest, it was equal number of women, equal number of men. And for the first time, a woman, all the girls were feeling safe around such a huge crowd. Like, I would feel unsafe walking out on the street right now, but in that particular protest, it was so beautiful. Um, I don't know if the people there have seen that there are so many viral videos and photos of women in these protests, that they who were taking charge of the whole thing. They were fighting the cops. Of course, there were footages of cops slapping the women as well, and it was really painful to see that how can a male cop slap a woman. And it was true, it has happened. I'm not saying all the cops do that. There were so many cops who showed humanity, who kind of covered a lot of elderly people, who kind of served water and food to a lot of protesters. But then a lot of course, if there are bad protesters, there are bad police, and there are good police. People are of all kinds in every part of the field. So there were and those women were standing up against those cops. That man slapped that woman, and she was not going back. She was still standing there, and she was fighting equally. And this is what happened in most parts of the protest that happened in Delhi. We have a viral photo which I want to show my viewers as well, where a model, basically, in the city of Bombay. It was not only in Delhi that the protest was conducted. It was carried out in multiple cities, and in the city of Bombay, this particular model, the cops filled their van with a lot of protesters. They locked them up, and they were detaining them. Of course, they were taking them to the police station. And this one lady, she came in front of that police van, and she stopped that van like this. Like with one hand, she stopped uh, that particular police van, and it was so beautiful. It was uh, so beautiful to see, because that one image was so powerful. It showed that if women want, they can. And it was very beautiful. It was really beautiful to see that kind of the kind of motivation women had against these protesters. I just want to show my viewers. Can I show it like this? So
Sure.
I just want to show. See, this is exactly
Wow.
how this lady stopped the van. And
Wow.
this is not the first time it's happening. And in that one protest, so police had this uh very thick stick to beat the protesters. And a lot of men were there, and they were constantly beating the protesters. This one lady, who's a girl probably in her early 20s, these men were going, and she kind of tried to save these men from the cops. And she stood in front of him, and she stood in front of the cops. And that one was a good cop, so he didn't of course beat the lady. But then she was ready to be beaten for those protesters to go, because those were men. They could have the police can lathi charge the man. They can touch the man, but they cannot touch the woman. So that is why she stood in front of them as a shield, and she saved like some 10 to 15 men from being beaten. And then those men carried on with their sloganeering. So it was a really beautiful protest for women. And it was the most unique part about this one protest that happened, was that women were equal participants, and they were equally serving. And in the middle of the night, in the broad daylight, early in the morning, all the time, they were ready to do anything. And women were equally sitting there and sleeping on the roads as well. I will share the photos with you. You can share with your audience as well, that women were also sleeping on the street. These girls were also sleeping on the street. So it was very really beautiful to see that kind of women empowerment in that protest. And there was no misogyny there. There was no casteism. There was nothing. It was pure equality. Everybody was a human. Everybody was a youngster. Everybody was fighting for education. And there was nothing else that was dividing these people.
Can thank you enough for you to bring this information, because what the mainstream media is showing of this protest is only men. So what I saw, I was like, wow, where are women here? And when I saw your reports and your videos, I was mortified, because I pictured you in the middle of the protest, like she's just standing there by herself. And I was really worried for the role of women in this protest, but also by your security. But thank you for bringing this, because the mainstream media is not showing anything that you're telling to us, that you're telling us today. So can thank you enough for this. Um, eh, what I find very annoying, and it repeats every time on every country: police officers, the head of the Supreme Court, whoever you name it, they forget their salaries are paid with our taxes. They
Agreed.
cannot behave this way you're telling me. I mean, I'm speaking for the police officer that slapped the women. I'm speaking for the head of the Supreme Court and every single person that had a nasty and inappropriate behavior. They forget every time they work for us. And I mean, it's every time the same story. It's very sad.
If only the government, if only the cops, if only all of these civil servants, and these government officials, they realize that they are the kind of bad treatment they are giving to their citizens. It's their taxes, it's their hard earned money, through which they pay their taxes, and through which they those particular authorities, people on position are earning money through. And this really hurts when we see, as you also mentioned about corruption. Corruption is what, such as, we are giving project, we are giving our taxes for progress, we are giving our taxes to bring development, and all of those development money is going in the pockets of a particular man or a minister. So that is very painful to see from any middle class person's perspective.
Absolutely. One last question.
Yeah.
How how can you, as a citizen, I mean, every single Indian citizen, can be sure this is not going to happen all over again? That you don't receive again a nasty name for protesting your rights, that no one's going to be locked up. I mean, all of these that you have been sharing with me during this hour, how can we have a guarantee that the mistakes going to be repaired, but also we don't have to experience this all over again?
I'll tell you one thing. So, what happened here was that the government was saying, I told you that this law was kind of brought in by the government in the parliament to stricten which made the punishments for leaking the paper harsher. It kind of strictened the procedure of conducting examinations, and also the punishment for, and there's the kind of fine on these people who kind of spill over the question papers. So this government is of course saying that these people were about to bring the law, were about to bring the amendment long back ago. And we have seen it in the past that governments always say that they were actually about to bring the change, they were actually looking forward to bringing this particular law to stop this particular problem in the country. But it somehow comes in the limelight, and it somehow enters the parliament only after a huge protest takes place. So the government is saying that they were about to bring the bill, but then they did not. And they did only when the protesters came to the street, only when the youngsters joined these protests, and only when the scale of this movement went so high that even Bollywoods and celebrities and movie actors and actresses also came out in favor of the protesters. And this is exactly what we have seen in the past. We have seen, so what happened a few years ago in say 2021, farmers came on the street and they started protesting because government brought in some law, and they were against that law. And basically that particular protest was primarily for MSP, which is like the minimum selling price of the crops of the farmers. And that was the main issue there. But eventually what happened, the government had to bow down, and they had to bring in an MSP regulation as well. But again, even then the government was saying that we were about to bring it, but they did not. They brought it only when the protesters came on the street, when they protested for a couple of months, and that is when the prime minister gave out a statement that so and so laws are repealed, and so measures are added on into that law, and the demands of the farmers were being listened to. So I know for a fact that this is not the end. Again, some person
Mhm.
in power will say something wrong, and the protests are going to happen. What happened was in 2012, this lady, I don't want to put her real name, but she is called as Nirbhaya, all over the country. She was gang raped um, in the year 2012 in the capital city in Delhi. And actually, she lived nearby my house only. In the capital city, she was gang raped and she was killed, and her body, naked body, was thrown on the street. And she was not raped like normally. Her intestines were tore apart. This is the kind of horrific thing that happened to her. And that lady, they put um, these rods of iron rods inside her genitals and whatnot. So then eventually she died, of course. And huge scale marching happened in that particular year in 2012 in the whole country, and people thought that for the first time women's security will be taken seriously by the government. And then of course measures were taken to improvise the security situation of women in the country. And but nothing happened. Of course we are still there, rapes are happening every day, gang rapes are happening every day, women are being killed, all kinds of crime are happening, from dowry to gang rape to molestation, harassment, all things are happening. So it is never going to stop. Again something, some paper leak will happen. This is, I'm pretty sure, because the law did not mention any provision to stop this racket. The law kind of strictened the punishment of anybody who's caught leaking the paper. But it won't really help. It won't really help until and unless you stop that, the core of the problem. The core of the problem is that paper being leaked. You have to bring in provisions to stop that. Making punishment harsh will only make people smarter how to not get caught. So that is one debate. And I am pretty sure, to answer your question, I am pretty sure that today, earlier it was rape, then farmers, then students, maybe somehow again some protests will come for fuel, which people are already eyeing for because the fuel prices are rising. And some other issue will be brought in the country, and the protests will keep on happening, and the government will only come into action once the protests have turned into riots.
So we have to keep our eyes on your country because, as you just mentioned, as I was a fear, this will happen for many other reasons, but
It
this will
has
happen
already
all over
started.
again.
The
Yeah.
second round of the protest has already started. People who this protest was stopped once the government agreed. But then now for the FIRs for so many students who are still behind the bars, innocent students who were who were detained by the cops only for the sake of protesting, until unless they are released, these students are not going to stop the marching and stop the protesting. So the second round of the protest has already started on 1st of August, and it's still underway.
I truly hope for the sake of the people that is what really matters to me. The government have a better uh, a better behavior and and better measurements to correct all the issues. There are so many issues in India. People has no idea. And I mean, you have been extremely peaceful because I mean, if we put this same scenario, the same narrative in other country, maybe the country will be in flames. But in India is a different story, and the fact that what bothers me, one of the things that bothers me the most is the mainstream media is not telling things how it is. So I cannot thank you enough for being here and sharing this close report of what you saw, what you experienced, because it's not the same when you hear, oh, I've heard that thing, or I saw that thing on the TV. You were there, you cover
Yeah.
the protest, and you work with the news and on a daily basis. So it's your perspective is so much different than any other person that can tell the story, so thank you so much. For our
Thank you so much.
audience, you recently started a your own very media. The
Yes.
link of your as I told you, I love that you are finding your own voice because I mean, I love News X, but maybe one day they will say, you know what, this is it. You're out of here. Your opportunity working with us ends up here, and you need to find your own voice. So the link of the media will be in the info box, so you can follow it and see what she's posting there. So I check it out yesterday and I love it. So congratulations again on this new
Thank you so
project of
much.
yours.
Thank you so much.
For For our audience, remember to follow us in social media everywhere you can find us as Politics for Thinkers in any social media or platform, digital platform you can find out there. Also, our website, Politics for Thinkers. You can find the editorial of the week. You can find all the info you need to know about me or the show, or the email I created for you to reach me and ask me or send me the info you need to send me. I'm getting a lot of news tips, so thank you so much for trusting on me. This is it for today. See you next Friday with new voices, new people that has a lot to say, and it will happen here. Thank you so much. See you next week. Bye bye.
Thank you for watching Politics for Thinkers.